Well, welcome to another episode of repairs to this poor old Triumph 2500 Mark 1. Well, it's not really repairs, it's really a test run. In the last episode the clutch failed. That turned out to be the slave cylinder problem, and it was my fault. I bolted it on the wrong side of the bracket, which gave it too much push out, and anyway the piston partially came out and jammed the clutch on full down sort of thing. That problem has now been fixed, and the other problem it had in the test drive was a scraping noise from the rear wheel. That turned out to be the new brake shoes. One of them was in one spot, or two spots, was just a tiny bit too wide, and therefore on the edge of it was scraping on the inner face, not the drum part of the brake drum. So a bit of a grind with the grinder, and that problem was fixed. The other thing it did when I was driving around the block was it didn't get overheat, but it got hotter than it would normally run at, and I didn't notice the fans turn on. So I've got to check today what's going on there. I did put a new temperature sender in to see what was going on there, because the temperature went from normal running temperature, like quarter on the gauge, to half on the gauge within about 300 meters. So that didn't quite make sense to me. The thermostat's the old thermostat, so anyway I need to drive it round and round and see what it does, and see if the fans turn on, and generally just be happy that the car is running properly. Before it then goes, it gets a wheel alignment and a new exhaust before it will then do a proper road test where I'll take it for some distance. And so let's get on with that. Well, this car's it started up wonderfully, that was great, but it's having these teething troubles at the moment. The fans did not switch on, but the temperature gauge is saying it's running pretty hot. I think it's a thermostat problem, in as much as the temperature gauge sender is on the engine side of the thermostat, and the fan sensors are in the top radiator hose on the other side of the thermostat. The radiator is, warm, but it's not super hot. Well, the engine doesn't feel that super hot. But anyway, I'm going to actually take the thermostat out just as an experiment while I'm waiting for a new one to arrive. I've checked the circuit in the fans. Now I don't really know how that works, but I do know if you unplug it from the sensor, the fans will start running. And so all four fans run when you unplug from the sensors. And like I said, there's two sensors in the top radiator hose, so both can't be faulty. So once it's cooled down, I'll take the thermostat out altogether and take it for a test run. Then potentially that will mean that it will run hotter than it would normally run, because the theory is that it will circulate too fast without a thermostat in there, but at least it will circulate, and it should run cooler than it currently is, and it will also tell me whether the fans are going to switch on or not, because at the moment they're not getting any coolant towards them at all. So let's get on with that bit. Well, okay, I've taken the thermostat out. I've driven the car without the thermostat, and it made basically no difference at all. The temperature gauge was still telling me the car was mighty hot, and the fans were still not turning on. At that point I sort of gave up on filming a bit, and I've been working on it for days now with no real result. I still basically have temperature gauge that tells me the car is very hot and the fans are not on. So what have I done? Well, I tried all sorts of things. I got a new thermostat, and that opens at 77 Celsius. So I put that in. I bought this doohickey, which is like a laser thermometer or whatever you call it, and you point it at something and it gives you the temperature of whatever you're pointing it at. And the problem with this gadget is it doesn't actually recognize water or coolant. Because I had the bright spark idea that I would get some water, heat it to the temperature to see whether the thermostat opens at 77 degrees, to see what the temperature senders were doing in terms of temperature, and to see what the switches that turn the electric fans on were doing. Well, none of that worked, because this gadget gives me the temperature of the hard surface that the water's in. So I'm pointing it behind me here on a beaker, a glass beaker, and pointing this at the water. Well, it's giving me the reading of the wall behind it. If you point it straight down, it was giving me the temperature of the bench underneath the water. So it wasn't a real accurate temperature, if you like, but it was something. I took the top radiator hose off, which has got the sensors that turn the fans on and off. Now there's two fan controllers and two sensors in that top radiator hose. Now those fan controllers are adjustable to temperature. So the two fans on the back of the radiator turn on at 80 degrees, and the two on the front of the radiator turn on at 85 degrees. Now 85 degrees is around the running temperature according to the workshop manual. The thermostat opens at 77 degrees. This is all Celsius. Okay, so I took the radiator hose off, plugged up one end, and tipped boiling water in there. It's still bubbling. I'm tipping it in, and the fans aren't turning on. You point this gadget at it, and it gives me the temperature of the radiator hose at 70 odd degrees. I started to go a little bit gaga at this point, you know. So I put it all back together. New thermostat. Where a heater hose used to come out opposite where the temperature sender is, a heater hose used to come out, so that was plugged up because the heater's not connected. So I put another second hand out of the dolly, I think, sender in that side. I got a new voltage stabilizer, and then I found a new voltage stabilizer that I bought years ago in my stash of parts. So I started playing with the voltage stabilizers. I got other gauges that I had laying around the shed. I had two other temperature gauges, and using the new voltage stabilizer and a completely independent power supply, just power from the battery basically, and running it to one of the senders. Now that gauge that was completely independent to all the car's wiring, power, everything was completely independent, was still giving me hot readings. you know, 3/4 on the gauge and the fans aren't running. So I was thoroughly confused. At that point I decided, didn't know what to do really, and I still don't really know what to do. So I have put in one of the new voltage stabilizers. I've hooked the temperature gauge up to the older second-hand sensor, because that seems to give me a better reading, ever so slightly. And the car is just back together. This gadget, doohickey, is telling me that the car is not hot at all. The radiator part, the tank part, the hoses, wherever you point this, even at Welsh plugs on the engine, you're getting temperatures that are only below or just above the opening of the thermostat. I think the hottest temperature I found was about 90 degrees on one of the Welsh plugs down in under the instructors. You know, that's going to be hot there anyway. The car is not hot. It doesn't sort of feel like a hot engine or smell like a hot engine or act like a hot engine. It sits there beautifully idling. So I have decided to drive it. I'll take it, get a wheel alignment, get the new exhaust made for it, and then start the running in process and ignore the temperature gauge for a while. I'll keep this gadget with me to keep an eye on it, because I do not know what's going on. So that's the story as it stands now. And that's about it for this episode. So tune in, same duck time, same duck channel, for more mechanical mayhem on this poor old car, when we'll go through the running in process and hopefully get to the point where I can drain the oil, change the oil filters, and put the sump guard back on it and call it done. Even though I suspect there'll be more to do with the mystery of the temperature gauge.